Hi everyone. Today I want to take you on a bit of a trip back in time. Back to a moment I often think of as the golden age of humanity, or at least a simpler, more grounded time, the early 2000s. We had just gotten through the Y2K scare, where people genuinely believed that when the clock hits the year 2000, computers around the world would crash. It wasn't actually a virus, but a technical issue with how dates were stored in software. And thanks to a ton of work behind the scenes, most of those fears ended up being overblown. And nothing major happened. It was one of those rare moments where mass panic didn't result in disaster. This was a world just before the attack on September 11th, 2001. The Twin Towers still stood, and the war on terror hadn't yet reshaped our global politics and everyday security. It felt like there was more breathing room in the world, less polarization, less always on outrage. Of course, radical groups did exist back then, too, but the internet hadn't yet turned every fringe opinion into a trending topic. And then there was gaming. If you were a gamer in the early 2000s, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Games were often released fully finished, on time, with fewer bugs, and without the expectation that you'd need to buy three DLC packs just to complete the story. Microtransactions weren't a thing yet. If a game had extra content, it came in an expansion pack, not as a series of $5 skins. More importantly, we owned our games. You had a physical copy, a cartridge, or a disc, and it was yours. You could play it whenever you wanted. Today, so many games are tied to digital licenses. If a platform goes offline or a publisher decides to delist the game, you might just lose access entirely. That shift from ownership to access is something that still bugs me to this day. You owned your Pokemon Blue cartridge. Nobody could take that away from you. Now we're told we own nothing, and somehow we're supposed to be happy about it. But it wasn't just better for gamers. Life in general felt calmer. Not perfect, but slower, more human. Of course, not everything was ideal. And I want to be fair about that too. Back then, people struggling with gender identity often faced stigma, misdiagnosis, or were denied help altogether. Mental help support for trans people was limited and often came with strict barriers or judgment. Fast forward to today, and many professionals have adopted a more supportive, affirming approach, trying to help people find peace with who they are. Some see that as progress. Others worry that things have moved too fast or without enough caution, and think it's important, and I think it's important to acknowledge that. Yes, there are people who undergo gender transitions and later regret it. That regret can be deeply painful, and those voices matter too. They're not as common statistically. Most studies show rare regret rates are low, but even so, it's a serious issue that deserves compassion, not censorship. At the same time, today's conversations around gender can feel overwhelming. Things like gender fluidity, changing pronouns, and debates over who belongs in which bathrooms or locker rooms. These issues weren't front and center back in the early 2000s. Some people see that as a loss of clarity, others as overdue visibility. It's a complicated subject, and personally I think it's okay to admit when something feels confusing or overwhelming. These are deeply personal, emotional topics, and we should be able to talk about them with honesty and respect. Sometimes I just look back and think, man, we had it good back then. Not perfect, but good, simpler, slower, a little less corporate, a little more human. But hey, that's just how I see it. What about you? Do you think the early 2000s were really the golden age? Or is there another time that felt even better to you? Let me know what you think in the comments. And with that said, thanks for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.